Hello and welcome to China Focus. I'm Shelley Zhang here in our San Francisco studio. Well, it goes without saying that in China, the Communist Party controls the media. Whether we're talking about radio, newspapers, TV, or magazines, it doesn't matter if they're state-run or private, they all have to toe the party line. But what about overseas? Well, it turns out that the Communist Party has its hands in nearly all Chinese media right here in the U.S. as well. Here to talk about this today, we have Allen Zeng. He's the president of the Sound of Hope radio network, one of the only truly independent Chinese media left. Allen, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Shelley, for inviting me.
So we'll talk a little bit about how the Communist Party is involved in this Chinese media overseas.
Well, controlling and influencing overseas Chinese media is a central policy from the very top. The Communist Party, the propaganda department, which is one of the top committee in the party, actually control this policy and how to make that and how to execute that. There's this called Overseas Propaganda Joint Committee, which is made up by 25 departments of the party and by the State Department. And joined together come up with the policy and the funding and the measures to implement that.
So you're saying this is actual, Communist Party policy. This is like one of the basic things that they do from the top down.
Exactly. This dating back to the very early stage, actually in the 1930s, when the Communist Party is still in the guerrilla time. They realized the importance of the media, and then by the 1944, if you recall, in the next 3 years, they fought a war and they ousted the nationalist government to Taiwan. During that. In the 1944, they got 1,100 media in the area governed by the nationalist government. So they call that the media battle their second battle line. So in that 3 short years, they can just topple the then government. So they realize how important media is, both in China and also in the United States, in Europe, worldwide.
So we all know that they control the media in China, like I said, but how do they do it overseas? Like, what do they just have state-run media here in the U.S., like Chinese media? Is that how they do it?
Yeah, actually, that's a very good question. There's a very good report called the Jamestown Foundation has a report published in the volume 10 of the 2001. It's an 11-year-old report. It's very accurate. And it needs to be added a little bit more evidence to it, but the main point is there. There are mainly four ways to control the overseas media. The first is really they just come in and they buy it. They buy the controlling share, or they just buy the whole thing. In the city of San Francisco over here, there's a radio station called KSFN, AM 1510. And this radio station is 24-hour Chinese radio. Mind you, Shelley, in the San Francisco Bay Area, there's no single 24-hour Chinese radio before this KSFN came into place. So it came into place about 2 to 3 years ago, completely leased by the CRI, China Radio International.
So that's the state-run radio.
Yeah. If you listen to the radio, you found there's not much local news, probably none. I never heard any local news. Very little or no local news, no advertisement. So it means that they don't mind, they don't care about making money. This is a very expensive radio station. The reason why we don't have a 24-hour radio is because it is expensive. And also in Los Angeles, KWRM, if you check that, AM 1370, these two radio stations play the same stream, same sound stream, both from China Radio International from Beijing. No ad, no local news, but they are able to afford that. It means that the money comes from the central government. This is just one example.
So in this case, they're coming in and buying up a radio station. Yeah. Is it obvious to people who are listening that this is China Radio International, that this is state-run radio, or are they still kind of trying to be, used like kind of the face of the other radio stations?
Yeah, it is. You can tell. Mm-hmm. They don't fake it. The thing is, the radio, the format itself, try to be neutral, try to present itself as a media. Media concept is very interesting. In the Western, media is a profession, right? It's a profession of reporting the fact. In China, media is defined as the voice of the party. Voice of the party. They don't disguise that. In the journalism school, in the textbook, in their the training of their journalists, they just hold it very clear. It's the voice of the party. And that's the first way, just buy it. The second way is controlling and influence the media owner or the operator. Every Chinese media operator, either from China or have a relative in China, or may they want to invest in China or expand in China. So if you don't go by the party line, one phone call, do you ever want to go back to China? And they could just yield. So by threatening them and lure them with profit, you can expand China market. Then they can just change their position. This is the second way. The third way is about just buy a piece of ad and just publish their content.
So those are three ways. What's the fourth way?
The fourth way is to send someone who has been well trained, very high qualification, and has a journalism background, and then has special tasks. Just enter a media, oversee media in the normal way, then just ascending to the top, and in that way control that media.
So a lot of the ways that you're talking about, like that way, seems kind of secretive. Are they being open about how they are influencing Chinese media, or is it something they're trying to keep kind of under wraps?
Yeah, you need to understand this, Shirley. They do a very, very delicate job. They're very, very careful about that. There's different tiers of overseas media that works for Chinese government. The most obvious, the first tier is just like the new radio I'm talking about. They just buy that radio, and that's it. And then for the other media, they want to maintain a neutral position. They even criticize Chinese government at certain times to build credibility, so that at the key time they can exert their influential power. So for such media, it looks like normal media, function like normal media, read like normal media at a normal time. Okay, so they really want to protect that. So when they send their people, their agent into it, they also work in the normal track. So you really cannot tell this is a qualified journalist, but they carry special task.
So it sounds quite scary in a way. How would you be able, as like a Chinese American, as a person who reads a Chinese newspaper, watches the TV, how do I know that the media I'm watching isn't influenced by the Communist Party?
You don't know. That's the whole thing. They treat this as a war. They're very, very careful about that. They use a lot of thought into it so that they have reputation, has credibility. Because a Chinese government-backed media carry very little credibility, even among the Chinese American. But a normal media, a locally based, locally rooted, has credibility. So they want to use that, they want to borrow that. That's why they use so much disguising way to grow this type of media.
So if you had to estimate how much of Chinese media in the US would you say is somehow influenced by the Communist Party?
More than 80%, let me tell you this, more than 80% are either controlled or heavily influenced by the Chinese government.
And how do you know, like for example, some of those more secretive ways, how do you know that they are influenced? Well,
first, I think Jamestown Foundation report is a very good one for you to refer to, and it's simple but a very, very precise report. It's a research paper, okay, by the Jamestown researcher. And other things, are not so, how to say, secret or hidden among the media professional inner circle. We know about that. And the party has a policy, has a paper, they publish about that, about the funding they allocate, and what's their general policy. And then they win they win their media awards throughout the last 8 decades, since 1930s. The policy is all stated, it's their pride. They even talk about when they, run this English media in the United States. The secret is hire a Westerner anchor person, and then hire the very senior, experienced correspondent to edit it for them, so that the report comes through as a perfect report. They're proud about that. They talk about that openly on TV.
But they're still trying to influence the content of the report?
Oh, of course they do. The key is about to influence the content.
So why are they doing it? Is it because they want people, Chinese American, because we're mostly talking about Chinese media, right?
Right.
Do they want Chinese Americans to support the party's policies domestically in China? Is that why they're doing that?
Yeah, communists have a principle or their faith. Okay, by controlling and influencing the public, that can translate into power. Okay, and back in the Soviet time, how the Lenin started this media is the voice of the party. Start from Lenin. And the Chinese Communist Party really inherit that. They know that if we can influence their thought, making sure they're sympathetic with us, when there's this key time, the so-called key struggle time, okay, they can use them as a power. And the Chinese American is a group of people, this is American living in this country, okay? If they speak loudly for Chinese government, and that it carry power, can make things happen for them. So they view this as very, very, how to say, instrumental to their foreign policy. It's a part of their operation, part of their budget. You know, media is like a battlefield. They openly say this in their policy book. It's a battlefield, we need to win that.
So it's not just domestic policy. It's not just that they want Chinese people to, be sympathetic with what they're doing. Do they want to influence, for example, how Chinese people in the U.S. see, China and U.S. relations?
Yeah, everything. For example, when they come to this South China Sea conflict, okay, the way for you to find out the positioning or the intention of for overseas Chinese media, very simple. Okay, take 30 days during that event. Take 30 days, take the headline, you list them together, you read them at once. You got a picture of their intention. Okay, they try to grow among Chinese American a sentiment of anti-US. The reason is they try to educate them. United States of America is anti-China. Of course, Chinese American cannot tell what is party and what is China. Like you criticize Obama, nobody will say you are anti-US. But if you criticize Chinese Communist Party, you are anti-China. They were able to create that type of confusion. And then when they are able to influence Chinese American that this is America is evil hegemony. American is is evil hegemony. Then they will be sympathetic. After the September 11, that terrorist attack, on one of the major Chinese media, over 50% of the Chinese people there, they hail. This is the American finally got their turn. And so this is very, very serious. Over the time, it will show its effect over the time of supporting Chinese government and their agenda.
So is it working?
It's actually, to give them credit, okay, it's working very well. Because the media is what you perceive the world is about. It's working.
So is this something we in the U.S. should be concerned about?
Very much so. Okay, time and again, I talk to the U.S. media professional, talk to the U.S. officials that you need to look at this seriously. Okay, if they can use media to control the Chinese American, this is a democratic society, right? Results are decided by votes. When they can influence people, they can vote. They can elect the pro-Communist Party official into the public position. It cannot do anything about that. If the general public are misled in this democratic society, you're going to create a bigger problem, very, very costly to fix down the road.
And is this something that the U.S. government is paying attention to?
Yes, they are aware of this, but they probably are not aware of the consequence of this, not as much.
Well, Allen, unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you for joining us today to talk about this very interesting subject, and thank you for watching. For more on this and other issues in China, join us at ntd.tv.